Dan Lanning is the hottest coach in college football right now. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Dan Lanning could not be thought of any higher by Oregon fans right now. And in the greater college football world, I don't know how you are on a better hot streak than Dan Lanning. So not only did Alabama pretty credibly want Dan Lanning to be their head coach, he says no with the most emphatically awesome video imaginable, in which words pop up. I mean, shout out to the social teams. Like, I don't know if Scott Anderson made the video. He might have, but he has just been such a wonderful addition to the Oregon athletic department. The cinematic recaps are just outstanding. And the video they put out had Dan Lanning saying, hey, if you're worried about your coach leaving, come play for Oregon. Come play for Oregon because I'm not leaving to go anywhere. That's when Alabama was in the mix. And then right on top of it, he adds Evan Stewart, the former five-star wide receiver, part of Texas A&M's all-time 2022 recruiting class. Oregon is in a great place right now. Fans are feeling very good because they are sure Dan Lanning is going to be their head coach in 2024 and probably in 2025 and 2026 and really just the foreseeable future. Because if this is a guy who isn't pulled away by Alabama, who apparently wanted him to be their head coach, I don't know that other than Georgia, anybody can pull Dan Lanning away. And that's a great thing for Oregon fans who have had to deal with a lot of coaching turnover over the last 6-7 years. So I think that Lanning is just in a fantastic position. I mean, the PR that you create when you release a video like that as your statement of, I'm not going and I am here, you follow that up by adding Evan Stewart, who can be a game changer on offense. And then, just as like the cherry on top of this beautiful ice cream banana split sundae, he's already got the strawberry, the chocolate, the vanilla. He's already got the banana split right down the middle. The chocolate sauce is there. The whipped cream is on top. He throws the cherry on top just to kind of troll people a little bit, but in like a really, really great fun way. And that fun way is he releases the video of him at his house when it was reported he was in Tuscaloosa, which he was not. He was not. He shows the video of him with his kids. Then he's asked about it on, I think it was the Pat McAfee show. And he says, yeah, I was watching the Jason Bourne movie with my kids. And one of them says, hey, the internet thinks you're in Tuscaloosa. And I'm going, son, watch the movie. which, by the way, I love even more. I am a movie fanatic. I love movies, TV shows. I watch a lot of that sort of stuff. I'm all over the place with it. And one of my pet peeves in life, frankly, is when people can't sit down and just watch and enjoy a movie. And Dan Lanning is someone who can apparently sit down, watch, and enjoy a movie. This is an emphatic statement to the entire country. This is a message to college football fans and to Oregon fans specifically, that this guy loves Oregon, wants to be here, is going to stay here, and then with the Evan Stewart edition is making it clear. We want to compete at the highest level every single year. Oregon played at a ridiculously high level this year. Washington was just a notch above them. But you look at what Oregon is building as they go into the Big Ten next year. This is not an approach. This is not a roster. This is not a coaching staff that gives off the mentality of, we're going to go into the Big Ten. There's going to be some adjustment, but we'll find our footing. Maybe, compete for a title in the second or third year once we kind of understand. Nope, that's not it. They want to go in and they want to win right here, right now, because this offense is absolutely, positively loaded. And that is with the addition of Evan Stewart to a strong returning core of Oregon offensive skill position guys. You've got great depth at the running back position. You have key returners and some great young up-and-comers along the offensive line. You've got key returners on defense, all conference players like Tyson Johnson. You've got guys who I think have all conference potential. I mean, Jeffrey Bossa was all conference this year at linebacker. You've got all conference potential caliber guys returning, like Jaleel Florence. You've got an all conference transfer safety in Kobe Savage coming in from Kansas State. These are the moves you make to not, reset, but rather reload. And that's what Oregon's doing. They're reloading, and they're doing so in a big way. So Evan Stewart comes over from Texas A&M. He was a 5-star in the 2022 recruiting class. He was on the All-SEC freshman team that first year. He was a freshman All-American, according to ESPN. And in that first season, he played 10 games. He had 53 receptions for 649 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, that would appear as, someone who's poised to take a big leap, maybe push for a 1,000-yard season. But he only played in 8 games in 2023. And the Texas A&M offense, this is really the biggest culprit of all here, and why I'm stoked about this guy's potential. The Texas A&M offense in 2023 is one that eventually got Jimbo Fisher fired. It was dreadful. It was terrible. It was not good. Tell me, does anyone expect that from Oregon's offense with a veteran starting quarterback in Dillon Gabriel, a second-year offensive coordinator in Will Stein, 3 returning starters along the offensive line, plus one guy who's going to slide over and start at center who played regularly as a true freshman? You're bringing in another transfer along the offensive line to probably start at right guard. You've got your top 3 tight ends back. You've got your top 2 receivers back outside of Troy Franklin from last year. You also have Gary Bryant Jr. back. I mean, there are just a lot of things going in Oregon's direction right now. Lanning is just on fire, and he's building the excitement level amongst Duck fans for 2024, and rightfully so. Now, Evan Stewart is a guy that can be a game changer on offense for the Ducks. He is someone who's got elite speed, great hands, makes contested catches. He does a little bit of everything. If you're looking for a guy to come in that replaces Troy Franklin and can replicate that production, I think Evan Stewart can be that guy. He hasn't done that yet. He also hasn't been in an offense that is as explosive and dynamic as the one that he'll play in at Oregon. He hasn't had a quarterback as good as Dillon Gabriel in the last 2 years that he's been at Texas A&M. So it's been a revolving door of mediocrity, offensively and quarterback-wise, over there in College Station. And Stewart now comes to the Ducks with immense potential. And when Texas A&M was off to a better start this year, Evan Stewart was kind of at the focal point of what they were doing. He had 8 receptions for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns in their first game. In their second game, he had 11 catches for 142 yards. Then the numbers dropped off considerably, and he went in the transfer portal when the season came to a close. This is a guy who can be a number 1 receiver, but you add him with Tez Johnson, who is a 1,000-yard receiver, Trayshawn Holden, who I think Duck fans will agree has got a lot of untapped potential and can be a big-time player on the perimeter, Gary Bryant Jr., who we know is a great after-the-catch guy, and then you add in Jurion Dickey, who battled injuries last year, the former 5-star recruit, as a redshirt freshman. You got Kyler Casper in the mix as well. I mean, I got no concerns about Oregon's depth at wide receiver for next year. Absolutely none. And then you factor in that Oregon goes 3 deep at tight end. Dillon Gabriel is going to have him some weapons. He is going to have him some weapons. And I think Stewart's speed, ability to run, particularly on the deep shots and make contested catches and just take the top off of defense, this is a guy who can be a game changer offensively. And I think Will Stein is going to very much enjoy the new toy that he's got to add to his collection, because his toy box was already overflowing, but he's just going to put one more on top. And I think that is excellent for the Ducks. Transfers have been very successful for Oregon over the last couple of seasons. I expect that to continue. A question came in about transfers that we're going to answer. Here's a question you're going to answer. Have you checked out FanDuel yet? Because if you haven't, now would be a good time, because new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You don't have to win, you just have to place it. That's it. The NFL regular season has wrapped up. but the playoffs are right around the corner, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose on a $5 bet. It doesn't get any easier than that. The app is super easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. I almost did that again. Technically did. You can find bets in the new Explore tab as well. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, and you can do all that and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to place your first bet and get 150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. I am jubilant, by the way, for a variety of reasons. Number one, I don't have to cover another coaching search on this show. Number two, that means Dan Lanning is still Oregon's head coach. Number three, Evan Stewart's coming in. I like what that means for the offense. Number four, my alma mater, Santa Clara, beat Gonzaga for the first time since 2011. Spencer's having a good night. I tell you, I am in some kind of mood right now. Mood. Thank you for listening to or watching the show, wherever you may be doing that right now. Anytime you want to get in the mailbag, you can. YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions wide open. If you want priority mailbag access, you want to be able to talk with me one-on-one, far easier than you can on social media, and get all my instant thoughts and reactions to the breaking news of the day for the Ducks, go join the Locked On Ducks subtext community. Link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch. Absolutely, positively not a requirement. Free 14-day trial. Then it's just $5 a month. And that is absolutely, as I said, not a requirement. But I make it worth your while. This question came in over there from Bud. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that our incoming transfer portal players were able to participate in the Ducks practices leading up to the Fiesta Bowl. How helpful is that in getting an early start in terms of both personal development and team success in 2024? I think it's important for transfers. I think it's more important for the high school kids. The guys who play as true freshmen in the fall are the guys who typically are early enrollees. Now, Jurion Dickey's situation was a little bit unique in that he was battling an injury throughout the year. He was a late enrollee, though. But when you have the opportunity to go through spring practice, and by the way, the earlier you can get guys over and get them practicing, the better. You start to build chemistry. You start to build timing if it's a quarterback-receiver combo. There's no downside to getting guys on campus earlier. I think that for freshmen, though, it just can tend to be more important because they haven't yet acclimated to the speed of college football. And those first few practices and those weeks and those months leading up to, the spring game and then the spring game itself, those are all an opportunity to be able to go out and get acclimated to the speed and kind of what the sport is all about and how to be at your best and everything like that. But on the transfer front, guys like Evan Stewart, that's somebody who you want to be able to have get to Oregon for spring football so that he can have chemistry and rapport with Dillon Gabriel. I think there was a photo that was flying around, an actual photo, not a look, there's a flight from Eugene to Tuscaloosa sort of photo, because that was all bogus. But there was a photo flying around once upon a time of Stewart and Dillon Gabriel in Eugene together. And I think that connection between quarterback and receiver is arguably the most important, other than perhaps quarterback and center. I mean, you think about Bo Nix with Alex Forsyth. That was a great dynamic for Oregon's offense. Same thing with JPJ. But the rhythm and timing with receivers and quarterbacks, that can be developed more easily throughout spring football if you have the guys actually there. And I think for transfers, they're just about always there. That's the other reason I mentioned the high school recruits first in response to the question. When transfer portal guys come in, they tend to be there for spring football. Now, late window portal transfers, that's not the case because they, can come in after spring football. That window, I think, is April 1st to the 15th, if I remember correctly. But I think that for the portal guys, getting them there, getting them acclimated, the sooner the better, because, once that Fiesta Bowl was over, it's on to 2024. That's the way the staff is thinking. That's how they're able to go out and not just, let everyone know emphatically, we're staying in Eugene, but we are getting Evan Stewart as well, and that's a game-changing guy. Another question from Bud, this one about the Huskies. Given the talent of Washington's quarterback, receivers, and offensive line, where do they currently stand for 2024 in terms of players at those positions, opting in for the NFL draft, returning next year, transfer portal in and out, incoming recruits? And how do you think they will compare to this year's team on offense entering Big Ten play? I think it's pretty clear they're going to take a step back. And this bears discussion on this particular show because that's the one hurdle that Dan Lanning hasn't gotten over yet. Now, as I record this show, I can't say with 100% certainty who Alabama's next head coach is going to be and that it won't be Kalen DeBoer. I don't know that it will be, have not heard anything or read anything along those lines, but the buzz is clearly palpable because his name gets tossed around. The betting market thinks it's interesting at the very least that he could be their next head coach. And he is yet to sign an extension that is warranted when you win the Pac-12 and go to the national championship game. So, that's something that had been discussed all the way back to November or October, I think. And it's been continuously pushed off, maybe to the end of the season so that they can see, exactly how much they want to invest or whether this incentive or that incentive should kick in because they reached the national title game. I get all of that. But that's a fascinating conversation to follow, to say the least. And it is nice as Oregon fans right now to be able to say, well, our coach is staying in Eugene. And that's a big thing. And to parlay that into a recruiting victory is just a really, really big time move from our guy Dan Lanning here. So I think that's all fantastic. But as for Washington, let's assume that DeBoer stays and he's their head coach next year. Will Rogers is a capable quarterback. He's not Michael Penix. Dillon Gabriel, conversely, is not Bo Nix, but he's a capable quarterback. I think the gap between Nix and Gabriel is smaller than the gap between Penix and Rodgers by just like a step. By a step. Will Rogers can throw for a lot of yards, has seen a lot of college football. I know they brought in Jeremiah Hunter from Cal, who's a good wide receiver, by the way. I mean, he's been down there with the Bears as their number one guy the last couple of seasons, and I think that guy's a stud, big-bodied receiver, fits what they want to do, which is push the ball down the field and throw 50-50 shots. But there's no way that whatever receiving core they can put together, it'll be as good as this year's, because it was the best in college football this season. Odunze, McMillan, Polk, those are three NFL guys. They're not going to have that next year. They don't have a top 10 pick supplemented by, a third and maybe a fourth or fifth round pick with the other two. I do not see that happening. So I fully expect them to be at a lower level than they were this year. And I think for the Ducks, they're capable with the way the roster is being built right now and is pretty close to completion at this point. Might not be all the way done because there's still a ways to go, but it's 90+% of the way there. And I think Oregon has a better chance to be at the level they were at in 2023 than Washington does. I think they can be a lot closer to it because the whole foundation of that Washington team was Penix and the receivers. Bo Nix was huge for Oregon. I'm not trying to take away what Bo Nix did there, but I think the team was not as reliant on him all the time as Washington was on Penix and the receivers. I think Oregon had a more balanced attack. And that was a narrative that, played out throughout the season, that Oregon was the more balanced team. Well, they were the more balanced team. They had a statistically better defense, and they had a more balanced offense. They just didn't execute that way in the Pac-12 championship game. But I think that for the Ducks going into 2024, it's always worthy. It's always a worthy idea to keep an eye on your opponents and know, okay, who are we going up against? How are they going to compare and everything like that? But the focus should remain on Oregon and maximizing what the Ducks can do with this roster, with all the returners and the talent that they've brought in, and the coaching staff being back. Not a single departure from the coaching staff. I knock on wood. But that's pretty impressive for a team that went 12-2. And I think that for Oregon and Dan Lanning to have staff continuity, to have as much player continuity as you could really ask for with the amount of talent that was on last year's team, the guys that they brought in, I think Oregon is well on their way to being a contender in the Big Ten in year one. So I feel really great about where they are. And I think that Washington is definitely poised for a step back from what they were in 2023. Doesn't mean they can't be good. Kalen DeBoer's never done anything but win football games. But I don't think they're going to be able to get to the same level that they were at this year. And I think Oregon has a better chance. Comes down to execution on game days, as we know. But Oregon has a better chance to be closer to what they were in 2023 than Washington will. I definitely think that. I also think there are 3 more mailbag questions I've got to answer for today's show. Not got to. That makes it sound like a chore, and it's definitely not. I get to. How about that? Change one letter, and the entire tone of a sentence changes. Isn't that amazing? Almost as amazing as GameTime, which is the best place, the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events that are happening near you. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, whatever it is, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy. Get all-in prices so they don't slap on fees at the last moment when you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back into the mailbag we go. Again, YouTube comments or Twitter if you want priority. Head over to subtext. This is from Peyton. Question for the pod. If you had to give this season a grade, what would it be? And how would you grade the transfers this past season, just the major guys? So I'm going to do a show about that sometime next week, depending on what sort of news drops over the weekend, where I go through and I evaluate, because that's worthy of a pretty sizable chunk of the show to evaluate Oregon's 2023 transfer portal recruiting class. So I'm going to have a hold on the second part of that question. But the first one, what grade would I give this season? Now, when I give out grades on shows, which I've done many times before on this one or on Locked On Pac-12, soon to be Locked On College Football starting on Monday, I am not a modern teacher/professor where A's are easy to attain. And if you just do the homework, you're going to get a B. No, I am an old school tough grader in which C is average, C plus slightly above, B minus doing well, B doing great, B plus outstanding. Anything that starts with an A is darn near close to the best you can possibly do. And A plus, of course, would be winning the national championship. So this all depends on, the program you are and what kind of expectations you can have, where you're at with your coaching and everything like that, right? It all factors into it. With that said, I've gone back and forth on how to grade Oregon, and I give it an A season. A team that played in the national championship game is a team that Oregon lost to twice by a combined 6 points. Oregon won 12 games for just the 6th time in program history, just the 6th time ever. And I know that it was a disappointing end, but to minimize what that season was and to say, nah, it's only a B, it's a B plus, no. Statistically speaking, one of the 6 best seasons in the history of Oregon football, which has been around for a little bit longer than I have been on planet Earth. Spoiler alert, it's a lot longer than I've been on planet Earth. It's longer than you have been on planet Earth. Whoever you are, I know I have listeners and viewers in all sorts of age demographics, and I appreciate you all very, very much. But I think that was an A season for Oregon, and the A plus would have been playing in and perhaps winning the national championship game. If you think it should be A minus because Oregon didn't win the Pac-12, I'm open to that idea. But I just look at what Oregon did, how close they were to achieving their goals, and they just weren't that far away. They just were not that far away. It was an awesome season, and I'd give it an A. I'd absolutely give it an A. And I do not give out grades lightly. I really, really don't. But that's how strongly I feel about how great that season was for the Ducks. There were a lot of highs. There were more highs than lows. We just remember the 2 big lows. But I think our confidence in Dan Lanning has been renewed over the last 48 hours. Question here from Nathaniel. Hi, Spencer. I enjoyed your discussion about whether coaches should change their styles. Even after the question, though, I'm left wondering if UW gets exposed a bit next year. Maybe they keep their style but make modifications like what Lanning is doing on the defensive line. Thoughts? Like they could do what Lanning's doing on the defensive line. Thoughts? So The interesting thing about Washington and Kalen DeBoer going into next year is they have not recruited at a very high level, and that obviously didn't matter this year because Penix and the receivers were just that good. DeBoer is a very good coach. I don't think DeBoer is a very good recruiter. I think he's pretty average in that regard. They will have good players. They will not, as I mentioned earlier, have the same level of talent at the positions that drove them to the national championship game, which was quarterback and wide receiver. And they're going to lose their 2 tackles as well. And that's going to be a loss for them, at least in some regard, because those are both NFL caliber tackles. So Washington was built in a very specific way, and it's the way that Kalen DeBoer likes to play football. But here's what I'll say about that guy. Everywhere he's been, he has won at a high level, and he did it at Fresno State. And he went into the Rose Bowl in 2021 as the head coach of Fresno State. By the way, he went into Autzen in 2021 and almost beat the Ducks. He went into the Rose Bowl in 2021 and beat Chip Kelly and UCLA with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. That was a good UCLA team. They ended the year, I believe the Holiday Bowl got canceled that year, if I remember correctly, and they ended the year 8-4. That was a good UCLA team. And DeBoer went in and won with a lot less talent at Fresno State compared to what they had at UCLA that season, because that was a good Bruins team. And so when I think about Washington and taking a step back, yes, I expect them to be a lesser version of what they were a season ago. I do not expect them to fall off quite like TCU did, where the Horned Frogs this year lost to Colorado, which, as time went on, how bad of a loss did that look? My goodness, the Big 12 was just not very good this year. And TCU went 5-7. They didn't even make a bowl game in the Big 12. So I don't think Washington's going to pull back like that. But if you told me right now the Huskies went 8-4 or 9-3 next year, that would seem about right. And I think 7-5 would be a lot more likely than 12-0 again. So I don't think either of those things are going to happen. I haven't looked at their schedule or anything like that, but they're going to be able to bring in some talent via the portal. But DeBoer is just very good. He's just very good. It's an annoying thing for us as Duck fans. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But he is very good, and I don't think he is capable of having, a 4-8, 5-7 sort of just massively disappointing letdown sort of season. They will always be good. It's just a matter of how good and whether or not they've got enough talent to play at the spots that matter for his offense. They like throwing the football a lot. Well, they've got a good quarterback. They've got a veteran quarterback. They're going to have a couple of good receiving targets. I don't know if Jeremy Bernard is back for them or not. He was their number 4 receiver this year. That guy's a good football player. And could be a really good number 2 receiver to Jeremiah Hunter. So they're still going to be a good football team. I love where Oregon is at, but I wouldn't get overly excited about the notion of Washington having some, Oregon 2016 season where they were really good the year prior, but then it falls apart. I don't think they'll do that. I think a pullback is expected, but a complete collapse, I just cannot see that. I think DeBoer is too good. Last question here from Cruz. Hey, Spencer, mailbag question. Sorry if it's long. TBH, I'd like to know your opinion too on this, obviously, since you're asking the question. I don't know if you feel the same, but it seems our roster returning is even more talented than this year, so I'm really thinking we make the Natty next year. Our schedule looks real favorable, and our roster is formidable. Should we feel like a CFP odds-on favorite? Should we feel like a favorite to win the Big Ten in our first year, given the announcements and moves made since the Pac-12 game? So that question came in before Evan Stewart was announced to Oregon. So the roster is indeed going to be very talented next year. Hard for me to sit here and say it'd be more talented across the board. When you lose Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Troy Franklin, Brandon Dorlus. Okay, that's your Heisman finalist quarterback, 1,000-yard rusher, the best receiver probably in the history of Oregon football, and your leader in sacks. You can still have a talented, good team. I don't know how you're automatically replacing those guys with players of equal caliber. They could be 80 or 90% of them. I don't know that it's going to be equal. Like that's just a lot. That's a lot of guys to lose. You have an all-conference safety in Evan Williams departing, but another all-conference caliber guy in Kobe Savage coming in. So that could be, an equal replacement or an upgrade if Savage is, really, really good. And Evan Williams was really, really good this year for the Ducks. Kyrie Jackson, that's a notable loss at corner. I think there are some questions out there, but there are going to be a lot of guys vying for playing time next season. I don't know that I could say the roster is necessarily going to be better, but is it talented enough to compete in the Big Ten? Yes. Is it talented enough to compete for a college football playoff spot? Yes. I have said before, will say again, and will repeat until the season begins at the very end of August/early September. I think September 1st is the first game against Idaho, which I hope I will be in attendance for. Oregon's standard of success in 2024 will be making the college football playoff. If they do not, that would be a disappointing season. And my standard this year, coming into it, was you got to make the Pac-12 championship game. You got to be able to get that. And they got there. And they got there emphatically. Since the Washington game, there was nobody that was playing Oregon close. Washington State close for quarter and a half, and then the Ducks pulled away. Cal, close for about a quarter, and then the Ducks pulled away. Arizona State, that was never close. USC, not as close as the final score indicated. Oregon State, thanks for showing up. I think Oregon was really, really good this year, and I expect them to be really good next year as well. But when you play Washington at home, Ohio State at home, and at Michigan, 2-1 in those games would be outstanding. Does that mean Oregon automatically goes 11-1? I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait to see what everybody else does and whether or not Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan. That is another big move that still has to be made to make this determination, but I think our expectation right now should be making the college football playoff. That's a reasonable standard. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.